everybody, and welcome to another episode of Create Your Best Life with Rex. And I'm so happy that you're here. By the way, the chat room will be open. If you have questions or comments that you'd like to ask my guests, please leave them in the chat room, and we'll try and put them up on the screen, and we'll try and answer those as they come along. I'm excited because today I've invited the guests back, and I'm going to bring them up on the stage. They're going to tell you about themselves, but recently we did a show together about business, and we're going to continue that discussion because it's important whether you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, work in the corporate arena, or a small business, whatever it might be. These gentlemen work to add value to you and to help you raise your bottom line and add great service to your customers and clients. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them on. This is Doug McCall and Martin. I'm sorry, it just says Martin there. Martin. And so together, we are all here to discuss how you, the audience who is watching, can improve your business and your ability to serve others and make more money doing so. All right, without any further ado, I'm going to say, Doug and Martin, please introduce yourselves one at a time. Whoever wants to go first, I'm not going to call you out, and just share some information about your background, and just know that you who are viewing today, live or in replay, can go and catch the other show as well as any of the shows, because they're all archived. They're at the Create Your Best Life with Rex YouTube channel, and they're on rexsikestv.com. So I invite you to do that as well. Once we're done here today, share the show, subscribe to the show, hit the like button, leave comments, do whatever you can to help spread the word to your friends, your colleagues, and people who are important to you. All right, so who's going to go first?
After you, Martin.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Doug. I'm Martin Stemfors, and I am the founder of a company called Silverdrill. And Silverdrill is a corporate transformation company where we help large companies and small companies transform. And we look at several different factors to help them achieve their visions and different targets. And I have to point out from a get-go that we're not coaches, we're not trainers, we don't do it the old traditional way. We have come up with a new method how we do it. That is quite revolutionary, and we see great success with it. So that's me, and part of the team and colleague here, we have Doug McCall as well.
Hey, everybody, and thanks for inviting us back again, Rex. It's always a pleasure. And, I was the founder of Advanced Business Solutions, and March and I worked together for years and years. And we fell together again recently, so we have collaborated with Silverdrill. And what we're all about now is not helping businesses to survive, but how they can thrive.
That's certainly important in this day and age, because there's a lot of changes going on in the world, a lot of changes going on in business globally, everywhere. And so for those of us who want to succeed easier and much better, your advice, your input, your collaboration, and the processes that you help run clients, customers, and people through is making that difference for them. So Martin, right out of the gate, kind of took out my first question, which was, what is your main role? Is it coaches or trainers? And he said, no, we're not. So I don't even have to ask that anymore. But since I don't have to ask that, you guys can tell us what you are instead and why that matters.
So, Doug, if you're okay, I take a stab at it, and please help me. But so we have done this for decades, and we started out doing it as coaches and trainers, both as consultants and in companies. And very often that is top-down fed, and the audience is very seldom heard. They're not engaged in the discussions. So we have changed that. So we consider ourselves tour guides, if that's not a very professional term in this case, but we are guides. We help customers and clients move through certain processes and programs that we have developed to engage them, to include them, and for them to develop things instead of us standing there telling them how they should do things the old traditional consulting way.
Yeah, another thing about it, a lot of the companies that we talk with and we go into, and we've both been part of it also, there's a lot around market analysis, and every company that, knows their worth does some degree of that, and then how much recognition they get out there. But the one thing that is important is creating the frameworks and structures that get you that brand and get you that visibility you need to have that's so important out there to growing your business, and also looking where you can save money in your business, not just sell, and cut, but save.
Excellent. We talked a little bit about this in our previous show, to introduce you, but and what you do, and I too, consider myself a tour guide. I mean, this is why it's so amazing that we met. It was fortuitous that we met, and I'm thrilled that we have. But because we share that notion in common, a lot of people think you can do, they go, do it to me or do it for me. And a tour guide really doesn't do anything to you or for you. But what they do is they invite you to look at what's there that you should see or what you need to avoid so that you can, in other words, you speak about being facilitators. You're actually eliciting from the people the kinds of learnings and experiences and strategies and experiences that they need in order to be more successful.
And it's very interesting. Thank you for saying that, Rex, because I think when we look at tour guides and such, and you travel somewhere and you talk to the tour guide is telling you things. There are often people in the tour group that know more than the tour guide.
True.
Because it's an interest of theirs. They want to go and see something because they have read about it for years and they have expertise knowledge, while the tour guide has general knowledge. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to extract that from the clients, from the team members that we have in the group, instead of us telling them, and I don't know how many trainings Doug and I have been to that are inclusivity and diversity and all that, while very important, absolutely, it's force-fed. It's pushing down, very little inclusivity. And that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to get people to partake, because there are always people in the room that are sitting silent in a corner. They don't dare to speak up, either because they're shy or they don't think that they should be heard or that they have a voice. But they can sit on extremely good knowledge. And that's what we're trying to pull out and to get people to participate.
This is great. I think the last time we talked too, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mentioned that I was consulting for some schools, so I've been called in and different things. And one of the differences that I've noticed from the time that I was in school and the years since to being, in grade schools, elementary schools, and high schools now, is that in the old days, it's kind of like spare the rod, spoil the child, tell them what they need to do, make sure that they get it and regurgitate it. And, if they can't do that, they fail. And what I've noticed today, and I say this because there's such a climate of disregard and poor pay for teachers in this country, that what I've witnessed, my experience in recent months, has been that it's more about eliciting from the people. It's more about self-initiated learning and being told you have the ability, even the special ed kids, you have the ability to do this, and we're only here to assist you. We're here to help you, bring forth your learning and your understanding, as opposed to what we're telling you what to remember. And I really appreciate that, and I really I respect that, because what I've discovered in that is this kind of unconditional positive regard. I can't say that's true for every teacher, but in most cases, their willingness to accept the student where the student is and then help guide them someplace more experienced or better to learn the material. And you could say there's a little bit of hand-holding perhaps, but they're really working at getting the people to be self-starters and then be able to maintain that and be able to extract the information, whatever it is, and all the tools that they need, and apply that to the situation so that the learning is more intrinsic to what we are, who we are as human beings, as opposed to something that we just memorize.
Yeah.
That's a very good point, Rex, and thanks for bringing that up because we're not the people that come in, look at your watch, and tell you what time it is, or tell you how to run your business. What we are is the people that come in and say, okay, what as a potential client, what would I be looking for, and what are you delivering, for potential clients or current clients? And when you're setting, we talk in terms of goals every year with every business, but there's a difference in having goals and having short-term strategies to reach those goals. And that's the kind of things that we look out for.
And we very often look at this. If you imagine climbing Mount Everest, and many years ago, I had the privilege to work in Finland with the first Finn who climbed Mount Everest, Veikka Gustafsson. And it was fascinating to listen to him and his way of thinking when it came to corporate, because he pulled analogies all the time about climbing, that you needed to have a strategy. You need to have a roadmap so you know where the peak is. But you also need to have those phases or stages that you get used to the high altitude and such. So it was fascinating because we are trying to do the same thing, and we look at this as climbing Mount Everest. We go in and talk to the customers and ask, what is your Mount Everest peak? And then once we know what that peak is, we can then help them guide through what is the best route to get there, what are the different steps you need to take to reach the peak. And that's everything. It's not only I need to walk here, it's equipment, it's team spirit, it's culture, it's people, what processes you have there, and what data, what intelligence you have, that when you look at the mountain, what do we need to know, and how agile can you be in this? Because all of a sudden there's a snowstorm, you have to change the plan. Same thing with companies. Political environment that changes, stock market changes. There is events going on around in the world that changes your market, your potential. And we are not experts in our clients' markets, but we're experts in helping them understand how they can navigate to reach their peak.
That's great. Going back just a bit to and by the way, I do want to encourage people who are watching live to ask questions or leave comments in the chat room, and to do so, and we'll try and get them up on the screen if we see them. But when you say that your tour guides and the clients share with you where they want to go, and you help them achieve the goals, you made a statement that that's kind of general, and sometimes there are people in the audience or on the tour who know more than the tour guides do, and that would be true. I mean, that would be an accurate statement. But at the same time, the tour guide is one who knows the terrain in theory. They've gone through it, they've walked it, they're there, they know what to look out for, they know what to point out. So they're, in many cases, they have more experience than the people who are first approaching these things. So, and when it comes to, for example, climbing Everest, there are Sherpas who climb up and down the mountain all the time, and they carry things, and they wear tennis shoes and shorts, and they go into the snow, and where all the rest of the people are bundled up and have oxygen and everything else. So sometimes the very best thing you can do is to find somebody like that Sherpa or that tour guide, which is what the roles that you embody, but the cool part is that you start by going, okay, customer, okay, client, okay, where is it that you want to go? Where do you want to end up? And then we'll help you get there.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think, Rex, Martin brought up something important when he used the example of Mount Everest. You don't go from the base to the top of the mountain. It's a journey. And that's why we're tour guide, because we're kind of leading on that journey. And when you look at it, you have to have things like agile planning, because you don't want to fall off the mountain, right? You want to balance the goals daily on what you're doing and how you're going to get there. And you need to do that, as Martin said, with data-driven intelligence, not just data, but intelligence that helps drive these decisions. And all along the way, like a minister that I once attended his church, it took 2.5 years to walk the Appalachian Trail. And guess what? In that time, innovation changed. There were better hiking tools and things like that. So you need to be able to do those things too for operational efficiency.
Oh, great point. I would also say, when I was a kid, I would lie down in the backseat of my parents' car wherever they were traveling, and about every 5 minutes go, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" I mean, that's kind of a universal experience, I think, for most kids. And as my career and stuff took off, I was traveling an awful lot, and I hated it. I hated being in airports and on buses, and I was great once I was there, but I didn't like getting there. But then I realized that I spend an awful lot of time getting there. When I'm there for a day or two or a week or whatever. But I have lots of time traveling, and I better learn how to enjoy the journey, or I'm going to be miserable most of the time. And so that's the really important point. That is, when you said it's a journey, you don't get to the top of Mount Everest. You do step by step, but how you get there is important. In fact, more important in some cases than even getting there, because sometimes things change or goals change, or people who you begin a journey with change. So how you travel matters.
Yeah, and it's we always learn from a journey, right? We always learn something in each stage. And one thing that is important as well is that you can derail every now and then from a journey. If you have a success roadmap, it's okay to derail, because you know where you're heading, so you can fail fast and easily move back to where you're heading. And when you are taking this journey, you experience new things, you learn things, that all of a sudden there is a crevasse, or there is an ice rock or something, or there is an avalanche coming your way. And like Doug said, you need to be agile, you need to understand, you need to be able to manage change and control risks. And that is so important for companies, because when you have a team that is resisting change, you fail very easily. So in this journey, we're helping people to understand what the risks are, how you can manage them, mitigate them, or control them, and also change, how you can help people overcome that resistance. They're scared because they haven't done it before, or like we said before, they don't think they have a voice, or they have done something for 20 years, and for them it has worked for 20 years. But they have learned something, they have tacit knowledge from these 20 years that we can help extract, that will help them and the company to become more successful and reach the targets that they're looking for. In this case, the peak, right? In a much more efficient way, and stay more competitive.
Well, I have to tell you, Martin, you said something very important there when you talk about change management. Number one, the whole team has to embrace it. And then number two, you have to provide continuous support for that team. That's a leadership issue that we all have to accept, and being agile. But it's as important to make sure that your team understands the journey, understands where we're going, and being agile and look for the risks, as Martin said, and being willing to say, okay, here's what happened. That just happened. Who knew that was coming? So what do we do next as a team, and have a deeper understanding where the journey is going to on the next leg?
Well,
and that's something, thanks, Doug, that's something we have learned as well, that in this process and journey, if the team knows why, what, when, and where, and how, getting over resistance to change is so much easier, because all of a sudden they're included and they know why we're doing things, how we're doing things, what is being done, and what the benefits in the end are for them. It's very often that if you don't know the end result, or you haven't been part of understanding and learning the desired end goal, it's easy to resist, because you don't know everything. And we humans, we have this thing that we need to know everything to do something. I was in London London School of Economics, and listened to a person who was talking about change, and he took up, and being a Swede, it's kind of interesting. He said, if you change is pretty much that you have a Volvo today and you're getting a Saab. What is the journey? You're moving from the rear-wheel drive, you're moving to the front-wheel drive, all different kind of things. People need to understand that they're both safe cars. There are benefits of each one of them, but why are we moving to a Saab versus a Volvo? And it was fascinating because it was put in so simple terms that it's understanding why this is benefiting me to go for a Saab instead of a Volvo. And once you have changed that belief in people, that they understand and believe that this is the right move, they're going to be your best promoters. They're going to be the hardest working people, because all of a sudden they understand the mission that seemed to be mission impossible. And now all of a sudden they have explanation, they have a tool, they feel engaged, included. And there you are. All of a sudden you see companies thrive, like Doug said earlier, instead of resisting. And we have both been in companies where companies are changing the structure, the strategy, and everything, and it's force fed down. It's not being told why, just that you have to do it. And everybody's resisting.
Well, it's it's an interesting thing. I got a whole bunch of questions that I want to ask you, but before I do, and I want to make some comments also, but I want to remind our viewers who are watching live that they can ask questions and leave comments in the chat room. And if you're watching in replay and you're at YouTube at the Create Your Best Life with Rex channel, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell notification so you always are notified about when there's another show. And then go ahead and like and leave a comment or engage in that way too. Share it with other people, because the way that we spread good ideas is to share them with our friends and our colleagues. And this is an important show, and two important gentlemen that I want you to go ahead and share. I guess we might have talked about this a little bit in our last conversation on air, but you use the term facilitators, and a lot of people today, there's leadership training, and people want to be leaders, and they call themselves leaders. And I submit that no genuine leader calls himself a leader. Other people call them leaders, but the true leader doesn't say, I'm a leader. I mean, you don't have to. But what are the characteristics of a good leader versus a not so good leader in the world that in which you get called into? Because obviously it's top down. There's things that, the corporate culture goes from whoever the lead model is, and that can either be very successful and wonderful and uplifting and edifying and inspiring and motivating and and a good fit for all, or it can be horrible, where the leader thinks I'm the top dog and you do what I say and wait until I tell you. And what you just said is the access to knowing the purpose of things, to have the whole team involved and knowing what's going on versus I'm doling it out little bit by little bit because I'm the guy in control or I'm the gal in control. So what makes a good team leader, if we want to use that term, facilitator? What are the characteristics that are necessary in today's world to get that team cohesive and moving together?
Rex, I'll tell you something. This is really cool, because somebody once told me, if you're a leader and nobody's following you, you're just out taking a walk. So, the thing is with leadership is people need to view their leader as somebody that genuinely cares about them, helps to grow their career, motivates them to do more because they love what they do, because they want to do it. And a leader also builds people. They understand. All of us have our strengths and all of us have our weaknesses. A true leader tells me how to take the strengths I have to improve on some of the weaker sides. And I'll openly tell you, many moons ago, I worked for a great leader. His name was Martin Stenfors, and that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. No, I'm blushing here. It's a very interesting thing, and I'm going back to the mountain thing again because it's so easy to explain, and Doug makes so many good points there. So what we first do, we define leader versus manager. There are a lot of managers and bosses out there, and they push people forward. Leaders inspire people. Leaders include people. If you walk up the mountain, do you want somebody pushing you up instead of somebody walking in front of you that leads you? And if we go back to the medieval times and even back to the Romans and the Etruscans, 500 before Christ, the king or the leader, the admiral or the general, they were the good ones that won so many wars. they were always the one ahead of the troops, in front of the troops, made the troops following them, trusting them that they knew what they were doing because they were putting their own lives at stake. And it's the same in the corporate world. If you're a leader just sitting pointing fingers and telling people what to do, what not to do, how to do it, or that they're useless and such, you will never succeed. But if you actually lead, so you inspire people, they will follow you. And once you have that following, they trust you, they will do anything for you.
Beautiful. Both answers, gentlemen, beautiful. I think of it kind of like a relay race, where there's more than one person running the race, and they're passing a baton, and they pass the baton at certain moments, but the person who runs it in to the finish line is just as important as the person who started the race or anyone in between, because they're working together. They're passing baton. If they hang on to it or they don't pass it, or they, in other words, it's about that cooperation and that esprit de corps, the team spirit, the ability to work together to accomplish the goal that they set out to accomplish.
Yeah.
You also used a word earlier called a strategy. So
Yeah.
why is strategy is important? How do you help your clients with it?
So the strategy is the roadmap. And it's very interesting because you need to have a clear roadmap wherever you go. If you go on a vacation, if you go on a road trip, if you do a business venture, you need a roadmap that you can follow. You need a vision so you know what the end goal is, what you're looking to achieve. But to be able to achieve it, you need several different things. And one of them is to have a very clear strategy that stakes out the milestones, the different frameworks, the structure, competitiveness, awareness of a market and the company, your capabilities. And without the strategy, so many companies, and we see that sadly today, that there are a lot of, and Doug and I have seen this now numerous times, that there are a lot of startups. I used to live in Silicon Valley, and if you live in Silicon Valley, you have to have a startup. I've had a startup there that, we were perhaps not the best startup at that point, but the company is still alive. But they grow too fast. Companies grow too fast, and they get VC money, and they're super successful. And all of a sudden, reality catches up with them, and they have no strategy. They haven't done it. They have just, been so full of energy and inspiration that they have just moved forward. And those companies, I think Doug and I, when we looked into it, it was 1 out of 100 startups that succeeded. And 99% of those companies that succeeded, that one company that succeeded, had a strategy. They had spent time in the beginning to build a strategy. Same thing when Doug and I started this adventure with Silver Drill. We started out with a strategy. What are the next steps? What do we want to achieve? How do we want to go there? So you need to have that roadmap. In the olden days, and old enough that you had a map in the car that you held in front of you and you had to follow it with your finger. Today we have GPS. And back then we didn't even have mobile phones. But today you have AI and things like that can help you with this. So strategies are critical for your success.
Yes, that's one of the things that Martin and I shared that we've learned over the years, many years in businesses. When you look at your annual goals that are up here, you must have a strategy on how you're going to achieve those goals. So you've got that strategic part, but you also have to have that tactical piece down here that says this journey is going to involve this, and this to reach this part of the strategy, and then this, and this to reach this part until you climb all the way up to that goal, right? And so, you can't just say we're going to start out the year and here's the goal. By the end of the year, we'll have 15% growth in sales. Well, you got to have a strategy on how you're going to get that 15%. And beneath that, you have to have tactics on how you're going to achieve each piece of that. Do you need more salespeople? Do you need better salespeople? Do you need better clients? Do you need to look more? So it all comes together, and it's not just a matter of setting the goal. And as Martin said, oftentimes it comes top down, most of the time, and says, okay, our goal is 10%, 15% increase in sales this coming year. And then you've got a lot of directors of sales and vice presidents of sales, SVPs of sales saying, how are we going to do this? Well, that's why the strategy and also your business intelligence has to tell you what's achievable and what the stretch goals are.
And there's one thing there, I piggyback on you, Doug, there, what you said that we have mentioned before that is very critical when it comes to this. It's to have a fail fast plan and understand that the strategy is a living document that is updated based on circumstances. And like we talked about before, political climates and such. We have now tariffs that are coming that are affecting a lot of companies. You need to have a fail fast plan. So if the strategy you have and that you're heading down that roadmap or that road, if that doesn't work, stop doing that. Turn around, do something else, fail fast, review what didn't work, redo it, go another way. Because a lot of companies, and we have both worked for them, they said, this is what we're doing, we're going after this market. And you plow in money, time, and resources for months with no result because either we didn't understand the market, we were not the right service provider for the market, etc. And you have now all of a sudden wasted a lot of energy, time, and money instead of immediately saying, okay, we give this a month. If it doesn't work out within a month, we do B, take route B instead of route A. And I think a lot of companies that work with strategies or have developed a strategy, they don't have that. They stick to just going straight forward. And we have said it a couple of times, one needs to be adaptive and agile.
Yeah, I would argue that the most trouble that most people get in my 50 years of experience is they just get stuck in their ways and they don't realize that if you want to get ahead, you need to be able to adjust and continue. You need to be flexible. Sometimes you have to let things go. Sometimes you have to add things in, but it's about the flexibility and the resilience that you embody, because if you're not willing to change, you're not going to change much. And so an open attitude, an accepting attitude, an exploratory attitude, the willingness to participate, are all very, very important. So, when it comes to the strategy, obviously you have to have a purpose. You have to know where you want to end up. You have to know your destination or your goal or something, and then how you're going to get there. And you mentioned a GPS or like a roadmap, and that kind of thing. But you also have to have the desire and the mindset and the intention to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So, and that means getting a lot of different people who may or may not be there on the same page. Because, if I want to go this way and somebody wants to go that way, and I want to go slow and this person wants to go fast and this person doesn't care, it's how do we as facilitators within a group or an organization get the people to understand how important it is to move together, so that they all end up in the same place at the same time, and call it a win. And then on top of that, to be able to measure their progress, to know that they are making that progress. Because some people have no clue, they're gathering money, but they don't know if they're making profits, or if they're spending more than they're saving, kind of thing. So would you speak to this?
Let me give you a little bit of an example, Rex, and Mark and I have certainly seen this before. We've talked about it. Oftentimes, many, particularly large corporations, come out with what they'll start with maybe an RFI, request for information, an RFQ, request for a quote, and it turns into an RFP, request for proposal. And what happens in big companies many times is they have a library of these questions that they've answered before. So they put a list together of what the questions are that are being asked, and then they farm those out to certain individuals in the company that are internal professionals. How would you answer this? How would you answer that? They looked at questions they've answered before. They put a nice, flowery, glossy proposal together. Looks pretty, looks really nice. We can speak to it. One thing it doesn't do sometimes is it asks the question, what are they looking for when they ask this question? Even though you may have seen it 20 times before, it could be a different company. So, the question becomes, what are they looking for? What are they truly expecting? And then part of the strategy might be, let's bring in a professional that's familiar with that type of an organization and maybe knows that company and get some insight into it. So again, that's planning, that's strategic, it's tactical, it's getting that win out there.
And to that point, to add that as well, sometimes it's like herding cats, right? Everybody has an opinion, and everybody or anybody want to run in different directions. So a lot of it has to do with culture. And we have said this before, and I think it was Harvard Business Review that once said that there's a quote out there that is claimed to be done by a professor, but I understand that he wasn't the one saying it. But it's like strategy is eaten by culture any day for breakfast. So if you don't have a good strategy in a company, it doesn't matter how good strategy you have, because you need to have the culture where people understand where they're going. They need to be proud of who they're working for. It also helps with staff retention. It helps with people go through change, because now they are one company and they work together and they have learned how to embrace other people's opinions. And that's what I said in the beginning, that when we work with our clients, we bring them into a big auditorium or room or conference center, and we go through everything with them. So everybody feels it has to be safe space. I know that sounds wishy-washy and sounds like we sit down and sing Kumbaya with them, but we don't. But it has to be a safe space for people where they know that they can be heard, where they know that they can be understood, and it's okay to speak up. May not have the best idea, but just the comfort knowing that you can speak up glues people together, and it helps the companies align the troops and align with their vision, where they're heading. So focusing on culture, then once you have that down, it also helps with talent retention and talent attraction. So you get the best people into the company that will help you achieve the goals and reach the vision much faster and in a better way.
That's a good point. One of the things I've seen Martin do many times is when we put something together, and even when I worked on his team, it was, folks, we're going to leave the rank at the door. Nobody has a title. We're going to work as a cohesive team. Everything's important. There's nothing that's not important. And it's the summary of all of the points that are brought out that becomes the whole. And that's where we get the wins.
Well, this is all, I think, great stuff. This is amazing. And Ben left a comment earlier about, the Lao Tzu comment about, the leader does it kind of invisibly, so that the people say, when it's all said and done, they go, we managed to do this ourselves, which is cool. Because I think in the old days, and in some, it's not just the old days, because sadly there's still businesses that run by this model, or services or government or whatever. But the idea, that you're enforcing something and you're telling people what to do, as opposed to having people feel like they're contributing to something that is greater or more important than they are, and that they're all part of it, and that they're all equally valid and valuable and have a say in it. So when you bring these people into this auditorium, to be able to, the safe space, which I think is an appropriate way of stating it, because there are plenty of places like boardrooms that don't feel particularly safe. And I would submit, in the workshops and play shops, we always said it's a safe place to stretch, because you need to also stretch. You just can't be feeling safe. You have to be able to, confront the things that you need to change, or let go of the things that that hold you back, and willing to add in the new things. So, it takes you from where you are comfortable and moves you forward safely, but not always necessarily comfortably, because anytime it's like getting a new pair of shoes. They may not be comfortable until you break them in.
Thank you, Rex. And I like what Ben said, because, I once heard a saying, a lion doesn't have to roar to be a lion, right? But if it's the leader of the pack, it tends to moderate and help, be helpful and help people along, help with the hunt, that sort of thing. So excellent point, Ben. Thank you.
And there is and I agree with that. I think there's also a lot of fear out there, and it's removing that fear. And it can be anything from fear, if I speak up, I may not get promoted, or fear that if I say something, I lose my job, or fear that if I'm not in this meeting, I'm not important anymore. And one has to remove that fear in a company. And I many decades ago, I worked with a company. Were you about to say something, Rex? So
I just included some background noise coming from someone, and I don't know who, if they're moving something, if it's Doug or you while talking, but there's some noise that sometimes like scratching on the microphone, so I'm not sure what it was.
Okay. It could have been me. I moved my finger here a little bit.
Okay.
A client I had many decades ago, that was this fear culture. I cannot say who it was. I'm contractually bound to not reveal who it was, but there was a fear culture, and people were, when there was a meeting, there was supposed to be 10 people in the room, but there were more like 35, 40 people in the room, and they were lined up along the walls because they were so scared of being left out of a decision. And everybody thought, "Oh, I need to be in that meeting, because if I'm not there, I don't know what's going on."
There's that sound again.
I wonder what it is.
I don't know. It's a scratching sound, like someone if somebody has a microphone and they're rubbing against. Anyway, keep going. I didn't interrupt you. It's still going on. I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening, but yeah. So it's that you have to remove that fear. So their meetings took 1.5 hours instead of 45 minutes that they could have, and there was no proper communication. So everybody thought that they had to be in that conference room to know what was going on, and to think that they had something to say. And I have worked in so many companies that said that they're the friendliest employer in the world, and you come in there and it's a fear culture. And that is one of the things that we are addressing in these programs as well, to remove that fear. And it goes back to creating the safe space, that if you have a fear culture, you won't move forward, or you move forward a little bit, inch by inch, because people don't dare to take the giant leap forward.
That's a good point. So let's talk a little bit about that, balancing short-term goals and long-term goals and making sure that both happen appropriately.
I think when you're looking at your short-term goals, Rex, and short-term goals and how they come out to equal or get to your main goal, you have to look at it in almost like baby steps. There are certain elements, certain things that must be completed. If you look at a project schedule, for instance, you've got to start to start, you've got to start to finish, you've got to finish to start, and you need to understand each element, I think, of that with that end goal in mind. And sometimes you're going to find things, and it's okay for a member of the team to say, I don't think that's going to work, or at this time, and here's why. Because if you've got a cohesive team and that's all coming together, then you'll get to that end goal by taking strategic and also taking tactical steps to reach your strategy steps along the way.
Fantastic.
And there as well, when it comes to making these small goals and to move forward, it's what we do is that Doug and I are not creating these goals. We work with a team and we guide them to figure out what actions they need to take to move forward. Because if we are telling them that this is now what's happening and this are the steps you need to take, then as soon as people, I don't know how many times all of us have been in a conference or in a meeting and we're all gung-ho when we're sitting there. As soon as we walk out of that conference and fly back home, we're back to same old. It was great when we were there, but since we were not part of an actual process, we're just waiting for somebody else to come and tell us what we need to do next. So what we do, we engage people. We are not setting the goals. We are not setting their actions, but we guide them through the process so they can do it. And then they decide what actions are needed, which ones are the highest priorities to work on, and then assign those. People volunteer or they're being assigned to do something. And when you have that process in place, then things are happening. Goals are achieved because now people are included in what they're doing and what they're working with, instead of just being given a 62 slide PowerPoint saying this is our new global strategy, make it happen.
Well,
And keep,
go ahead, Doug.
And keeping in mind, what you measure, you can manage. So if you don't have metrics, you don't have analytics that are your glide path on how to get there. That's important also. And one of the questions that's come up before is, what is market share? And who in the room has a definition of what market share is? Is it the volume of business you've got in that particular market? Is it the number of people you employ in that market? Or is it innovation? And is that innovation technology? Or is your innovation looking at your market, looking at your clients, being able to predict what they're going to need from you in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
Beautiful. So one of the things that I've discovered, both doing public seminars and private seminars and corporate stuff, was that somebody could fly into our retreat center, spend 2 weeks or 6 weeks with me, or be in a corporate training. That it was and had these nice little sayings, but that are accurate. Like the workshop begins when the workshop ends. So at breaks, at lunch, at dinner, overnight, the next morning, while they were there, getting the training, or the opportunity to learn something new and different, or to develop new habits. It was the opportunity to practice when you weren't inside essentially the classroom. But what also I discovered, having trained for lots of people at one time, was that a lot of people do the training and say, okay, thanks very much, and they all go home. And there's no follow-up. Mm-hmm. And so what you said, they fall back into their old habits by default because they haven't really done, anything to make new habits other than be exposed to it for a short period of time. So part of the strategies is giving people the tools, the wherewithal, the knowledge, the know-how of how to keep what you have changed moving forward, and to be able to continue to do that bite by bite, step by step. It's like maintaining an exercise program to be able to get the results that you want. Some people need, a coach to keep them inspired or motivated, or an accountability partner or whatever. But the idea is that as they learn these new things that they can implement, they then need to continue to implement them. So, can we address that a little bit? Like, what happens after you're gone? How do we keep people moving forward?
And I think starting there, and I will let you follow up, Doug, because I know you have a lot of knowledge about this as well. But starting there is, I think these big conferences are more social events, right? Okay. Because some people go there to just, yay, I'm getting out of office. I can go to Orlando, Florida and hang out for 3 days and meet my friends and drink a beer in the evening and such. And then next day they show up, they're a little bit hungover. They don't listen too much. So the concept of having these big conferences and such may not be the best productive environment for companies to move forward. But they are more social events to bond people, saying that, hey, you're of the same company. They have some awards and people are recognized and people want to strive towards getting that. But to your point, that when they leave, and Doug mentioned this, and Doug will follow up here as well, it's follow-up. And, being part of a decision making, having a clear action item and timetable of what needs to be done. So you don't just go home and say, yay, that was really good, thank you. But you actually know what your role is. What is the next thing? You have to be proud of a company, so you want to do something, and having the right task for the right people. So measuring then and do check-ins like we do, we actually give lifetime support to our customers. So once they have gone through our program, we don't go anywhere. We are there to help them. If they have something happening that goes wrong, we will jump in and help them. So we help them measuring the success or the outcome. And if that doesn't work, we also have, free go to jail cards where we help them say, okay, you somehow got off on the wrong track here. Let us come back in and help you a little bit to steer the ship back in the right direction.
Yeah, I think Martin made some excellent points there, because you have to have that attitude of once it begins, it never ends. And when you bring that whole team together, you're bringing the brain trust of your organization together. And when you look at agile planning, you need to be able to together create frameworks and have structure, have measurements and analytics that are going to drive the decisions that you need to make, and being agile enough to know that sometimes you're going to hit the wall or something, or you have to change. And always remember, if you're going to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat.
Yeah, and on that note with the boat, and Doug and I talk about this all the time, it's like, let the leader of a company steer the ship, but the people sail it. Because the people have the experience, expertise to sail the ship. You just need to stand up there and steer the ship, so you know where you're heading.
Well, it's amazing, because I like you. One of the things that has always been part of my programs has been, for the program that you're in, there's lifetime support. Because, I can't answer another program for you, but I can answer everything from the program that we did and keep you and help you through whatever you need to. And the reason for that is because you want to go beyond what most people will do, and give people the opportunity to grow into the experience that you've shared with them. And that doesn't necessarily happen overnight, and some people do it, I'll charge you extra by the hour, or, this, that, and the other thing. But the point is that if somebody's a client, you enter, I always think you enter into a kind of a sacred relationship. You have this sacred trust. Somebody puts their faith or trust or money into your pocket in order for you to help them, and you help them, and the bottom line is you're helping them to help themselves so that they can move forward and continue without you. But the fact that you're there to support them after the fact is what few businesses actually do.
Yeah, another. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
Another important part of that is, Rex, and I've seen this where true leaders will tell everybody in the room, you're not here by accident. Right. You were brought in here because we know that you have the knowledge, you have the head knowledge, and you have everything we need to plan ahead and make this happen. And when you open up like that, the expectation is, I'm here to be heard.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Doug and I have been involved in this. We used to work in operations and did a lot of transitions. And it's very often that companies are disconnected. I don't know how many times that a salesperson has been in there and sold gold and green forests. And then Doug and I come in to try to deliver what has been promised. And there's a huge disconnect. It's like, no, we cannot do that. And that's the key thing with staying involved all the time. We then worked for another company that once you had sold something to a client, you were the contact person for that client. So you could not just sell gold and green forest. You had to know that whatever you're selling or getting the clients to buy, you need to be able to deliver it. And if you're not held accountable for that, it's easy to say, oh, well, we can do this and that, and then you disappear. And then Doug and I come in and we're like, yeah, sorry, we cannot do that. And all of a sudden you have a not so happy customer. So it's key to stay connected and to have that partnership relationship with the clients. And that's where we offer lifetime support.
Fantastic. So, gentlemen, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to give you about a minute or two to kind of wrap up. But I've got far more questions than I started with as a result, so we're going to have to do this again sometime soon. And that said, there's also some other things that are are being generated as we sit here together and speak that we'll be able to talk about it at another time too. But because there's all sorts of things about the technology that's being used and how people embrace that and how they move forward and whether they do or don't, and I mean just so many different moving parts that I'd like to be able to explore with you. But in closing, what say you? I mean, I hate to leave it that general, but what say you?
That's okay. If I may start, Doug, I think something that is really exciting that is coming up here now is that we are actually starting a podcast as well, where we will invite. We have already a long laundry list of CEOs and senior executives from different companies that will come to us, and we will ask them what their challenges are and what they have learned. Some of these some of these guests are also customers of ours that will tell what they are going through and how things can be done differently. And I'm really excited because all three of us will work together in different capacities regarding this. So, and I want to say, and I hope I don't steal your thunder, Doug, but so please go to our webpage, silverdrill.com, and connect with us there. You have our contact information there. If you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us. And of course, follow Rex. And you can always connect with Rex as well, because we work closely together, all of us.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll do a pitch here. If you haven't gotten this book, I got this book and I couldn't put it down. I mean, I've got a shelf full of self-help books. This is not a self-help. It's a strategy book, and it tells you, how to live your life on your own terms. And it kind of reminds me of the analogy of the steamroller. And when we do something, we don't, as Martin said, we don't make the decisions, but we've got this big steamroller, and guess what? If you're running behind it, you're way back there. If you're running alongside it, you're just keeping pace. If you're in front of it, Lord help you. But guess what? The good news is the seat's big enough for everybody to fit. So that's the way we approach the business.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And the good news is, as of today, the audiobook is available. So for anyone who gets the book, they can also get the softback, the hardback, the Kindle, and or the audiobook, or all of them. And or as some people do, they buy cases of the books and they give them out to their friends. So they put them in libraries or hospitals or prisons or wherever people can use them and read them. But I will while you're here, we'll close out together. But if you get my book from Amazon and you go to rexsikes.com/book and you follow the instructions that are there at that website, I will gift you, when you buy the book for $20 or $40 or whatever it is, $497 online video training about mastery, how you master your thoughts, your feelings, your words, your actions to get the kind of results that you want to get, or to learn any ability or skill that you'd like to, with less struggle and with greater ease and more fun. And that's the promise. So go get the book, get the audiobook too. And we're so glad that you're here. And also be sure to visit Doug and Martin at silverdrill.com and get the information from them and as well. And you can visit me at rexsikes.com. And of course, you're watching rexsikestv.com, and all of the replays are right here at YouTube. So, gentlemen, this has been another fabulous hour. I can sit and listen to you forever. I also have the privilege of doing that sometimes, where we get to talk, and the public doesn't know yet, but Doug and I actually got together. He bought me a great burger, and had an enjoyable dinner meeting. And I know that some of us are meeting in Atlanta and different things, but I wish you a fabulous day here and beyond, and great success in all that you do and all that we will do. And for you watching, we wish you success as well. So without any further ado, we'll say thank you, everybody, for being here. And that's our show. So bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. See you next